One of the guys showed this article. In the Pro Male Collective. It's a great find. Boys don't cry. Studies suggest mothers, not fathers, show gender bias towards their sons. Of course, women are disgusted at a male person showing vulnerability. So the age-old bias that suggests boys don't cry is unconsciously perpetuated by mothers more than fathers, according to new research from the University of Guelph. This does not surprise me in any way. The study, published in the Canadian Journal of Behavior Science, found that moms tend to favor girls expressing emotions of sadness and anger over boys. Fathers, on the other hand, lack the bias towards emotions of anger and sadness in their children. Yes. Fathers, at least when the kids are small, tend to see them more like people to be taken care of, as opposed to girls and boys. I know that changes when puberty hits, but I know when they're young, it's one of the reasons fathers probably are better overall at parenting. Angry girls are still more pleasant than boys, as per this test. Crystal Thomason, study author of psychology professor at University of Guelph, told the CTV News CA by phone Tuesday. That suggests it's more acceptable for girls to be emotional than boys. Nearly 600 Canadian and American parents were shown images of children between the ages of 8 and 12 conveying sadness, anger, or neutral expressions as part of the study. Participants were then told to sort each image into a pleasant or unpleasant category. If you were quicker to report the crying boy as unpleasant, the idea is you have an implicit bias towards boys showing that emotion, explained Tomlinson. Of course. I mean, if the boy's angry, it's like, who gives you the right to be angry, male child? And if he's crying, she's going to feel disgust at it. However, mothers likely aren't even aware that they have these gender biases and may not necessarily force the biases in their parenting, the study author notes. I think women are quite aware of how they feel. They just don't want to admit it when it makes them look bad. But it doesn't have to show up in their parenting styles. Children aren't stupid. They know, they can feel how their mother feels. So if the mother shows disapproval at a boy's emotional state, he will be aware of it and change his behavior accordingly. So the mother style doesn't have to change at all. What we're measuring is the self-conscious knowledges of our stereotypes within society. This has nothing to do with stereotypes. You know, children they don't like broccoli isn't a stereotype. They just don't like broccoli. And it's not a stereotype that mothers, feel boys shouldn't cry. They have a disgust, according to this test, to boys who show emotion. So this has nothing to do with stereotypes. It doesn't mean that you as individuals have those personal values, Thompson said. This isn't meant to say that moms are ruining everything. Notice they have to put in this disclaimer, because even someone like myself is not saying that mothers are ruining everything. So obviously they're trying to protect themselves from moms coming up and reacting to this. It would be really interesting to see those biases, their beliefs, and how that reflects in their actual parenting styles. Again, their parenting styles don't actually have to be different. The child feels how the parent feels about them. Children have intuition just like adults do. In an ironic twist, researchers went into the study with their own gender biases, assuming that dads would be more biased towards their boys showing emotions and encourage them to toughen up during moments of sadness. There's nothing ironic about this at all. people are always going to have their biases until they find out that they have bias. What was that gender study? Yeah, the in-group, out-group bias. The researchers that found that people had an out-group, the women had an in-group bias to their own sex, and men had an out-group bias towards women. They had a bias that it would be reversed. There was no reason for them to think that it'd be that way, but they had that bias going in. And they found out the hard way through their research that they had that bias. So this is not ironic in any way. To be sure of the results, Thomason's team ran a study with different samples, but ended up with the same results, of course, because women find male vulnerability disgusting. It's in the very genetics of human nature. Unconscious bias may still present parenting risk. It's probably not really unbiased or unconscious, and there's no may about it, and there's no risk about it. It's going to affect the child. Boys' behavior society-wise is affected by how the mothers react. In her previous research, Thomason says parents often report that although they don't believe they have these types of gender biases, they are aware they exist in society. Of course, it's always passing the buck. Parents are then conflicted. She said, do they teach their sons that crying is okay, or do they tell them that they risk being bullied at school if they show emotion? Now, if I was parenting a boy, I wouldn't be toughening him up, but I would be warning him. You say, if your mother is disgusted by you showing emotions, what is everybody else going to feel? Sorry, that's just the way it is. If you want to see change, people have to be honest about how women feel about men when they're vulnerable. And they have to be, the fathers have to be made aware and have them be the teachers. Karen Irwin, child development expert, founder of Rural Parenting, warns that labeling any sort of emotion based on gender can have a negative impact on the child development. See, now they're trying to put a Band-Aid on it. They're talking about labeling. When a boy can sense his mother's disapproval at his emotional outburst, the labeling doesn't affect it in any way. He's going to be affected by her, and changing labels changes nothing. Whether it's boys don't cry or saying something like my child is shy, when they relabeled, we are prescribing them how we need to be. Instead of labeling those emotions, or would suggest that parents qualify those feelings for their children so they can use words to describe how they are feeling. See, this is meaningless. This is not a problem solver at all. This is nothing. You don't have to deal with the children. Men and women, adult parents, they have to deal with their own internalized feelings on a massive scale, on a societal scale, to make a change. Mothers have to admit how they feel, honestly. What's so damaging to society is this dishonesty that people have, that the mothers have with themselves. They have to come to terms with, they see their boys as male and a negative light, and they have to be the ones to change themselves. Eventually, instead of crying, they will use words like, I feel mad, because, as explained, it normalizes these feelings and behaviors. Now, Irwin also suggests that parents make their kids aware of all the different emotions people experience. You see, this is bullshit. This means nothing. I also think parents should have a variety of different books showcasing, yet that's useless. This also helps provide kids with diverse perspective on gender roles and break down stereotypical gender roles. This is an incredibly dishonest conclusion to come to. Talking about books, you can't break gender roles. When a little boy senses his mother's disapproval at how he expresses himself, it this kind of the gender role is set. Do you understand? That's where the gender role comes from. If you wanted a boy to have a chance of breaking out, you'd have to get rid of the mother. You would have to have only fathers take care of sons while making the father aware of what's going on and how they feel. Then you might have a generation of boys that grow up to men that show some kind of change from the so-called stereotype. They're never going to do any of this because they believe they want the mothers to have the children, to have full control. They see the child as an own object by their mothers. So them talking about this, they'll always come up with the wrong conclusion. This is a pathetic conclusion for these researchers to come up with. It's not even a Band-Aid. It's switching the blame. Anyway, thank you, Spark, for showing this article. And thank you, Nicole Bogart. At least they made this article. I'm shocked in this day and age that they will even allow an article like this to come out. Goodbye, everybody.